what you done?
There we go. Hopefully everyone can hear us now. Hello.
Right. Okay. Well, just for the podcast viewers, we'll do it again. We'll say hello again. Ready?
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to the podcast.
It's us. We're back for our Gnarlwood special, and hopefully everyone can hear us.
Yes. Hopefully you can all hear us. There may have been reports of there not being noise earlier. We are recording this on the 1st of November.
Yes.
So I think it's All Saints Day.
Ooh.
It's a bank holiday in various European countries.
Is it?
Just I was in Spain, and I was told it was going to be a bank holiday, and then I was talking to somebody, the people from Armies Games, and they told me it's a bank holiday in Italy as well. So we had a day off today.
So you say it's called All Saints Day today? I mean, I thought
I
they
think
were
it's
a
All
rubbish
Saints Day.
band. They didn't have very many hits.
They've actually got their own holiday.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why. I mean, surely there should be an S Club 7 Day before All Saints Day, but anyway. Who am I to judge pop
You'd think
music?
so. There's no day off like an S Club day off.
God. Right, we're here to talk about Gnarlwood today before everyone suddenly turns off. I mean, the bad jokes are just part of it, but who have we got tonight? We've got the Critical Focus channel on. Hello to you, gents.
Well, hello.
We've got Orc Tim. Hello, Orc Tim. It's a long time no see to you, sir. Although I say that, you were probably here for the last one, but hello again anyway. Mick Merritt is on, and so is Zach Matthews and Anthony Boyd. Welcome to you all.
Hello, everyone. It is a few weeks since we did one. We've been away, and then we had some Gnarwood Underworlds type recording to do. I think we actually played one of our league games, our Underworlds mini league games that we've been doing.
Which is probably now been cast aside.
Oh, probably, but you never know. We may get back to it.
Let us know in the comments. Do you want to see us? Yeah. Do you want to see us finish that off, or would you rather see some good old-fashioned newer war bands? I mean, I might bring one of them soon anyway.
New war bands.
Yeah. Mick is currently
I think we
the Sons
thought we
of
might.
Nice.
Yeah, cool. I think we thought we might play the last round because we've got one game left in the first round, as it were, haven't we? So we might play that as rivals and then move over to Nemesis for the rest of the tourney.
Anthony Boyd says both. Nope. He wants the new stuff and the old stuff. Don't want much, do you?
Lots of people want to see Season 1 Warbands and new rivals deck. And this is not, I'm obviously not having a go at you here, Mick, but I've got almost no interest in doing that. I don't know why.
So shut your face.
I mean, I will do it, but I think. But I don't know.
I tried to make
5 years ago.
I tried to make a Scritch deck.
Right.
Today, in fact, I think it might be in a Scritch deck with the Illusory Might. Scritch only have 2 Surge cards. That's pretty poor.
Wow. So you're relying on the Illusory Might.
So
was it Illusory Shite?
Yeah, Illusory Shite, yeah. I mean, they've got 6, obviously, but, I mean, with all of these rival decks, there's always 1 or 2 in there that are a bit rubbish that you want to be able to swap out, but the Scritch ones are pretty rubbish too, so, yeah, not really sure.
Mick says he played a Scritch-hungering Nemesis deck. Oh my eyes! I've no idea whether that was good or bad.
I mean, I'm guessing. I'm guessing if you're still sort of really leaning into the hungering Skaven, resurrecting him and charging him with him again and again, sort of stuff. But I mean, that kind of feels like that's been done, and we want to do new things with it.
That's like a old but fun.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Well,
I think that trope, for want of a better word, is always going to be popular.
Yeah, true. I might go back and look at it again. I mean, what rivals deck was used? Was it that were they? Bleh, can't even talk. What rival deck were they using with the Skaven deck? Then I'm assuming maybe it was the Claw and Fangs or something like that. Because I don't think it'd be the Illusory Might or the other one. Yeah,
Fang one. Yeah, you just say the Fang one. Fang.
I mean, there are quite a few nice cards in there. Although there's several upgrades that are like. This makes your fighter a beast, and obviously you don't want to make your hungering Skaven a beast because you want to give him a really nasty weapon upgrade of some kind, so he can go in there and start whirly dervishing around. But yeah, could all but one-shot Mollog at one point. Scary stuff. Mind you, you managed that in the game. You were doing, I think it was 5 or 6 damage, weren't you in yours?
Yeah. One of the. I think it was the big one. When it starts off on 3, but yes, he was doing 6 damage, I think.
Which is pretty terrifying.
Yeah,
right. I mean,
definitely.
That's one of those things. If you can get it to work, it probably works really well. But if it doesn't work, then you just end up sad.
You have a bad day.
Yeah.
Probably true. That's probably true.
But anyway, we are here this evening to talk about Gnarwood and various bits around it. So if anyone does have any questions, do shout them out in the comments as we go along. And if there's anything you just want to say about Gnarwood that you're enjoying, that you're liking or disliking or anything like that, do shout those out too, and we will try and get around to those and address them as we go along, because we're mostly freestyling this evening, aren't we?
Mostly, I do have an agenda, and I have started with our usual things of kind of what we've been up to. But it isn't very much, really, is it? I've been away on holiday, which has been very exciting. I had a week, or 8 days, in fact, just more than a week in Spain, which was lovely.
You don't look tanned enough for being away.
Well, it's October, and so it's not that sunny. And I mean, it was sunny. The weather was lovely, but my family are lazy, basically, so we didn't go outside very much. And I went with my in-laws, who are getting on a bit now. So there was a lot of sitting around indoors, drinking tea and eating cake. And there's nothing wrong with that.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all.
But we did it most mornings on the beach, which was nice. And then lots of lazing around, reading books. I didn't play any games really. I think I played one game of 5 with my kids. That 5 got a hexagonal tile.
Mm.
It's only a 2-player game though, but it's got hexagon. It's a bit abstract, but it's only got a hex. I know you like a hexagon.
I do like a hex. I do like hex on the
so
beach.
Yeah. Other than that, I while on holiday and a bit bored, because my kids were just on their devices and my wife was asleep, I think, because she's not been 100%, and my in-laws are probably asleep too. I did download Marvel Snap, which has kind of taken over my life. Well, it hasn't really. I haven't played that much. I thought about it quite a lot, but I haven't played it to excess yet. But it's now feeds itself into our Patreon channel, into the Discord.
Discord.
And Pete, you're holding out, aren't you, Pete?
I'm not doing it. Not downloading it. No, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Which is interesting. I'd love to be a fly on the wall when you talk to a psychologist about why you won't do that.
It's because I know if I download that, I will spend all my time playing that, and I'll be sitting there, because it's very easy for me when I'm at work to just load a game up on the iPhone. I just won't ever get anything done ever again.
I'm almost very jealous of these people who seem to be able to play at work. I mean, I haven't got a job, and I can't play that often. It's an interesting one.
Maybe you should get
well, maybe so I could play it. Why do you want this job? So I can play Marvel Snap like my friends do. I'm enjoying it. Why it's so addictive is you can squeeze a game in about 6 minutes, and that in itself is I could just have another one, because that's not too bad. Is it just 6 minutes? Well, I could just manage another one. And then by the time, because that's 6 minutes per game, and then each time you do a game, you probably achieve some of the objective things that you've got, and so then by the time you've picked one of those and you've revealed some new cards and you've looked at that, suddenly time has evaporated. It's not really 6 minutes at all, but it is very addictive, and I am quite enjoying it. But we won't talk about that too much tonight. I have started doing videos. If you've enjoyed them, please do like and subscribe. Well, not like and subscribe, like them and comment and what have you. I'd like to boost them a little bit if I can, and see if we can get picked up on the old YouTube algorithm. So it's probably just crashing and burning the algorithm at the moment, but that's by the by.
The only thing I have really to report over the last couple of weeks, I mean, obviously we did the Gnarlwood stuff and did those videos and stuff like that. There wasn't much else. I've got the new cards. I spent my £10 voucher on the new cards. The new card sleeves, rather, I should say, and people can't see this on the podcast. I've got the new pod.
Is that what they are? You showed a picture of those. You showed a picture of those on our Patreon Discord. You can join our Patreon if you want to, for extra fun and being in the Patreon. I'll just throw that out there. But I didn't realise. I just thought they were the cards, so I didn't realise they were the new sleeves.
They're in the new style of the new card backs. They're pleasingly matte. They're not. I don't know how long they're going to last. We'll have to see on that one. But they do feel like they have a similar, because they curve oddly. And I remember the dragon ones that we had. They didn't have this weird curve to them like the GW ones do. And I wonder if that means that they're of a less good quality. I mean, it's only like a tenner, and you do get about 15 objectives, and I think it might be nearer 30 Gambit cards. So unlike the old ones, you remember when you did them before, you got 12 objective sleeves and 20 power card sleeves. It was like awesome. If I have a 22 card deck, like Mr. Tim, Hawk Tim, you had to buy 2 packs, which was rubbish because you didn't need all the extra objectives because you only ever needed 12.
Yeah, but so I mean, I haven't got the sleeves because it's against my religion. But
I mean, you're gonna have to get some sleeves for when we start playing Nemesis.
Well, so you say. I'm just going to play new Warband.
Well, I mean, that's the way around it.
Old Nick, a lot better. I'm not playing the old one. Yeah, I will have to get some. Annoyingly, I did have some, but I gave them to my son because he wanted them for his Pokemon cards, and now I haven't got the right number.
We must have some.
So I probably do, but I'm not sure where they are. So I've got plenty of transparent ones. That's not going to help.
Yeah.
But he wants some expensive ones for his Christmas present. So maybe I'll sneak in a couple of extra boxes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of the old warbands, season 1 and 2 warbands. I'd like to play Nemesis. I have made a couple of decks with a few season 1 and 2 warbands, but actually, when I get down to it, season 2 especially, there wasn't that many warbands that I really liked in Night Vault. There was, I mean, the Ghosties maybe. I wasn't really a fan of the Dwarves or the Tree Elves. I wasn't really a fan of Moloch. The Wild Hunt, not Wild Hunt, Godsworn Hunt maybe, Gits maybe, but I kind of always feel that Gits is...
Gits and the Godsworn.
I always feel that Gits are yours though, so I don't touch them.
Yeah, I do the Gits, and also I don't want to play them now because they're like quite good. Because they're kind of in the meta, they're popular and people play them, and and they've had to advance them, so they're not as good. So I kind of feel like playing the Gits is now.
But that's championship, isn't it? Nemesis is a whole different kettle of balls.
Oh, well, it is, but the Rynos still stands, doesn't it?
Yeah, true. Although 4 glory, 3 glory, 4 glory is not much of a muchness in it, is there?
Well, I don't know. I mean, they must have thought that there was, otherwise they wouldn't have done it.
True.
So we normally talk about what we've released. It's basically all been Underworlds. Well, apart from these Marvel Snap videos I started doing, but it's all been Underworld, really, hasn't it? On here, I've got in the little synopsis here, I've got written Underworld, Underworlds. Well, what do we release? Underworlds. What's coming up? Underworlds. So we have kind of jumped back on the Underworlds bandwagon, which I suppose is why we're here talking about Underworlds.
Well, have we completely rescinded our video from a year ago saying why Underworlds is rubbish? And now we've done another video.
We quite put it like that. I don't think we quite put it like that. We have gone back on that. It does rather pose an interesting question for the podcast. I don't know that we have enough to talk about Underworld every fortnight, so I don't know how that's going to go. But we'll have to see. Which actually brings us neatly onto the Marlowe moment, which I've elevated this week.
Oh, we've got a Marlowe moment early, have we? Let me
sorry.
Let me key up the Marlowe moment.
I told you that, shouldn't I?
Here we go.
Yeah.
It's a Marlowe moment. Hopefully people in podcast land hear that and it's not just silence. Robin can find the
Well, I now copy it in because I'm audio editor extraordinaire these days. So yeah, I copy it in, and so the Marlowe moment is, and I think we have kind of asked this question before, so we won't spend a long time on it. But it is, why do you think people should play Underworld?
Okay, so for people who don't know, Marlowe moments are one of our patrons, Mr. Marlowe, Andrew Marlowe. Always comes on with loads and loads and loads of questions, so we decided to dedicate a little bit of every show to one of his questions because he does ask some very nice and sometimes very insightful questions.
And we quite often get half an hour's podcast worth out of them, so they're worth their weight in gold. I don't know if my comment thing is broken, Pete, or just nobody's commenting at the moment. If you are in the chat, if you can succinctly put why you think people should play Underworld, let us know.
And there's only 3 likes. If we've got 20 people watching, 3 likes. Come on, hit that like button.
I'm going to hit the like because I'm one of those 20. I hit the like button.
Oh, there's only 19 people watching it. Oh, there's 18 people. Oh God, it's all gone wrong. Right, so whilst people at home out there in internet land sit there and think of what their reasons are, I'll give you mine. I think it's actually one of the best games that GW has ever produced. I say
my choice.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, I think it's because it's not the best game GW have ever produced. I think people should get it because I'll change mine then. I think it's because now in the Gnarlwood sort of meta with Nemesis and with Rivals being such more of a thing, and with their balance getting better on it, I think it's legitimately a game that you can pick up and play very casually without losing before you put any models on the table. And for GW, that doesn't happen often in their games.
I would agree with that. And it's kind of always been like that to an extent, I think. That's always been one of the good things about it. Obviously, you could have situations where you were playing somebody who was really good, like Amazon or somebody who, was just brilliant. They would just wipe the floor with you. But I think I always felt like you were going to have some sort of close game. And sometimes it didn't work out that way. And, I came close to flipping the table once or twice. But
I think we all have.
more often than not, we've had close fought contests that have been exciting, gone down to the wire. And even when it hasn't gone quite right, there's normally a moment or two in the game for you, whichever happens, where stuff comes off and it feels good.
Yeah. We've got a few comments in the chat where Tim has said that he thinks the 2 new warbands are just fantastic and the cards in the new box set are just good for once. And I think to add on to that as well, in this box set, they've actually... it's a fully encompassed box this time round, whereas in previous seasons you got the warbands and the warband cards, and then you got a little pack of like additional universal cards, most of which were rubbish, several of which were just obvious auto includes, and it didn't feel like a game in its own right. After Shadespire came out and you start to realise what the pattern was, everything else that came out after that was just the springboard into the next season worth of cards and the next set of card chasing. Whereas this box, Gnarlwood, feels like you could buy this and not buy anything else and play Gnarlwood for ages and get by absolutely fine with it.
Actually, you've just made me think of something there that I had not really thought about before.
What's that?
How
much I hate you.
Yeah. How much I'm sick of the sound of your voice. When after the initial release of Shadespire, once we were kind of up and running into Nightvolt, the warband that was coming, and people might disagree with this, and maybe I'm misremembering, but the warband that was coming was almost secondary to the cards that were coming with it. So if you know what I mean. So like actually, people who play, they were vaguely interested in the warband, but the warband was you could see very quickly whether you liked it or didn't like it, whether the stats were good, and then what everybody was mostly interested in is what new cards were going to be and how powerful the cards were going to be and where they were going to go in their decks and everything. Yeah. And we don't really know how Gnarlwood's going to roll out, but that has shifted slightly, I think, because it doesn't quite matter so much now what universal cards come with it, or because they are universal, but they're not. Which I think we'll come on to in a minute, but the potential for Rivals deck. Suddenly the whole Rivals deck, people are still going to be looking forward to the Rivals deck, but it's going to be the Warband and how they interact with that Rivals deck. I think is going to be of more interest to people going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a few other comments. Zach Matthews says it's very easy to pick up and play a game, even like him. He says even like himself, who knows nothing about deck building. Yep, there's that Rivals element in there, and you effectively, both warbands get 3 decks to play with out of the new Gnarlwood box, whereas you didn't get that before without having to go through the deck building process, which I know lots of people love, but not everyone does.
I don't know whether Zach's comment just generally was just about because he's played it for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was comparatively easy to deck build as well until we got into the pandemic season. We didn't have all the cards, and it was all getting a bit. Deck building wasn't that difficult. I think it almost, in some ways, in those early days, certainly when you and I were playing, we weren't that polished, and so deck building was kind of fun. Definitely for me, got to a point where, especially making stuff on the channel, and we've talked about this before as well, but I kind of felt like unless it was top tier, on point, perfect deck building, it felt like it wasn't worth doing.
Yeah.
That became a bit of a millstone. So I'm really glad that's gone. But I think the game has been relatively easy to pick up and throw something together to play.
Yeah. Mick also says the new box is bang on point, and he says he thinks that sorting out reactions and inspiration helps. The rule changes for charge and move really help 3 model warbands. I mean, I don't know about the 3 model warbands bit. I think I agree that I think it's going to help with smaller model count warbands, or when you're in that boring end game where you've only got 1 or 2 models, it's like I can't do very much, so I'm just going to have to sit here and draw a card a few times before I finally commit my charge. You can maybe do that a bit earlier now, so it gives you a bit more, it reduces the negative play experience later on, I think, when you've got a limited amount of actual activations left.
I think so. We haven't played enough yet to tell. I'm a bit worried that some of the smaller, like Morgoths, the smaller warbands with the big fighters might get too much of a bonus out of it, but the only way to know is to play that. Yeah. We don't tend to play those warbands anyway. They don't tend to play those warbands anyway. So it's not the end of the world.
Mickey Balls is on. Hello, Mickey Bells. Sorry, not Mickey Balls. Mickey Bells is on, and he's put a couple of comments. Says he thinks it's a really nice bite-sized way to play. You can experience a little bit of all the different factions. You don't have to commit the whole day, although you totally can. That is very true. And all general stuff for right now. He thinks Nemesis format rivals keeps it nice and casual, so you don't need to worry about being out-carded instead of out-skilled or out-lucked. I agree with that too, and I think I've built probably about 4 Nemesis decks in the last few days, because it's actually very easy to build a Nemesis. Yeah, it's very easy to just suddenly go, right, pick a warband, blah, pick a deck, blah, go through, just grab all of the decent cards out of both, and you almost end up in a position where you've almost got like a 12-10-10 to start with. I did have a problem with Morgoths where I started to pick their cards. It was like, oh, I've picked all 10 of Morgoth's ploys. Okay.
I would totally agree with you on that, except I haven't built any decks. So I can't.
Well, you did only get home a couple of days ago, so
I've got tomorrow Thursday to build from Thursday night, so I have time yet.
I also found that rather than being in the old world where you had like 500, 600 cards, and you were like, okay, I've got 40 ploys now and 35 upgrades and 26 objectives, and now I've got to whittle that down, and oh look, I've ended up with very similar 12 set of objectives and absolutely none of the faction cards and so on. I've actually found this time around I've got sort of like, oh, I've got 13 objectives, and I'm actually not really sure 100% which one to get rid of, and I've got maybe 11 or 12 ploys, and again I'm like wrestling with which ones I'm going to get rid of, and it feels actually like I have to make a few more choices in this, not just they're all awesome, which one do I think is most awesomest, and which ones am I going to cut that are less awesome. It's more a case of they all feel like they're all good, and I can't decide which one's cut out, and it just feels like it's a bit more involved this time round, but not with the same amount of pressure.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed it whenever we've played and there's been a limited pool of cards. So the Vanguard rules I enjoyed, and then I also enjoyed it even back in the early days when there were, I think, Nightvolt, when there were only a couple of Nightvolt warbands out, so you only had like 1.5 seasons. That was really nice, but it did definitely get too much, which somebody else has commented here. Zach said he thought there were too many cards. I think it's, just to go back to Andrew's question, I think it's the pick up and playness and the fact that it's short, literally 12 activations each, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that for a VW game was brilliant. And of course the other thing is not the scatter token, or the scatter token is quite cool, but I'm holding up the scatter token podcast here. Hexes.
Sexy hexes.
Hexes just makes everything better. I've got to move 3. Where can I go? I can go over there, rather than the whole moving with rulers and all that kind of stuff. I think that turns off a load of people anyway. But also, you end up. I know I've done it when we've been playing Moonstone. You end up inadvertently cheating, or maybe inadvertently, but you inadvertently cheating when you accidentally move too far, or you put the
from front to back or whatever.
I can't remember where you started on the base, and it's just like.
And it doesn't necessarily matter too much in friendly games, but at the same time, it still kind of matters a little bit, because you're like, oh, I don't want to, like you say, inadvertently cheat. You're like, I don't want to be giving myself an unfair advantage here. But hexes, none of that at all, and I think any game is better with hexes.
It's simultaneously imprecise, yet more precise.
Yeah, exactly.
I really love that. Gaff Plays Games made a really good point, which is that for somebody who enjoys painting, each warband presents a different challenge, and I think that's really nice. And they're fairly quick to paint comparatively to doing a whole army. And I think the fact that I've only painted a lot more in recent seasons, but the fact that I have painted so many different factions from the game. Well, I'll never play AOS, I don't think, or unlikely to play OS. Oh, your friend's in again.
Blocked. Blocked.
That's just a really nice thing about the game. And also, if you end up not liking the miniatures, you've only got to do 4 or 5, and then they're done.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't really like whatever warband this is, but I've only got 5 models to go. I can very quickly knock this out, and we're all done. I mean, Gav Plays Games put a comment earlier as well, where he said after a few practice games, you can play a game in under an hour easily. I mean, even we can manage that. Even with recording it, sometimes we get to about an hour. Which is great. It can be as casual as hardcore as you like, depending on what format you play, so it caters to all skill levels. And I think the skill level itself is also not necessarily compared to the format that you play as well. I think you can play it as skillfully or as straightforward in any of the levels, I think, regardless of, whether you're playing Championship, Rivals, Nemesis. I think you can take any of those to the extreme of being hardcore or casual. So I like that. I like the fact that you can do that.
Yeah, you send me messages.
Seth Levine is on. Hello, Seth. And he said starting as a non-deck builder, but open to the possibility to get into minimal deck building the new Nemesis format. Again, I think that's great. It's making people think, well, it's only 60 cards. I can chop half of them out. That shouldn't be too hard. And Jim Saylor says he's never played Warhammer Underworlds, but he's intending to use the old additional cards to draft as soon as the game gets dealt. I think, Jim, depending, you might find you'll be able to keep the game just as exciting by just buying some warbands and using those rival decks or the warband decks with the rival decks, and just doing it Nemesis style.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think the deck building was overwhelming by the end, but before this change, and now, people like Seth are saying, well, I quite fancy doing a bit of Nemesis deck building, and we feel the same. Yeah. Suddenly, it just feels it feels manageable, and not only does it feel manageable. At the end of the day, I'm not sure. We haven't played very much yet, but if you don't do it, you're probably not at that much of a disadvantage. If you just turn up with your faction cards, or you literally just pull out one objective that you just know you're not going to score because it's a bit rubbish, and just put one in. There's an absolute minimal deck building. You're probably still going to have a good game against somebody who has thought a bit more about their Nemesis deck.
Especially if it's Nemesis and Rivals, I think.
Yeah, that's I'm talking about Nemesis and Rivals. So I think Nemesis and Rivals are going to be the way to play, and they certainly seem to have reinvigorated interest in the game, which is great, and is one of the reasons why we're returning to it. So that is Andrew's question, via a few other things, and next is our community shout-out. It's a bit of a sad one.
It is.
This week.
We need to play the last, is it the last stand, or last command, or last post? Last post, that's it.
Last post.
Yes.
Yes. The deck building website, Deckers, Underworlds Deckers, is closing. So I think it's run by Italian guys, isn't it? I think.
I couldn't say for definite.
And they've been doing it for a long time. I can't remember quite how long. Not quite as long as Underworlds DB, because I think I discovered that one first. But it's basically a fan-built online resource for building your decks and looking at other decks. And sadly, it's closing basically due to lack of interest. It's a little bit concerning, but I guess also they're 5 years older. People think a lot happens in 5 years. They get whole global pandemics, for example.
Exactly. Also, a lot of people that start a lot of these things off are younger, and then their lives are changing a lot more. Whereas we're old and we're stuck set in our ways. We've got no big changes coming up now.
Yeah, except our deck building thing will just be a piece of paper with a pen.
Yeah, exactly.
Got your list on there. I'll photocopy it. And your fax.
I'll write you a letter in cursive.
Put an email, please.
Email? It's a bit advanced.
Email. Yeah, I know, but I can do email. But
typewriter.
Email is mainly my preferred method of conversation these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is a bit of a sad one. I hope the Underworld DC will keep going. Jason, who runs that, is very chipper about the game, so that is good.
He does appear to be keeping update. He's been doing updates recently for all the rival stuff. Although he's struggling to get it to play ball in some situations because obviously some cards yeah, it just the way it orders all the cards behind the scenes on his website, it's causing him some headaches. But he is getting there with that.
Yes, it must be a bit of a nightmare for things like that when they change which cards you can have and what have you. I mean, I don't know how any of it works, but you know, yeah, I can. It's a big job. Got a big job on his hands.
Big job.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to step away from Underworlds a little bit, not a screenshot. Just to quickly go over, we normally have a little bit of a rundown of gaming news. I haven't got much other gaming news, but I've got a little bit of GW. Well, a little bit of GW news, really, not a lot, but a little bit. They released a new Slaves of Darkness models.
Oh yeah.
Which I quite like. They're pretty cool. They're nice. Kind of authentic to the old style, but yet inherently new. I'm looking for. I don't know if she's going to buy any, but we've got one of our patrons, Laura, who she's painted some beautiful Slaves of Darkness models. I'm interested to see if she paints those. I do like them. I'm never sure about Chaos Horses. They never look quite right to me. But I think GW actually struggle with horses a little bit.
I've not seen many. I mean, to be honest, normally when you see a horse, they're not like hooves up in the air, are they? And I think even if you took a photo of a horse with its hooves up in the air, it doesn't.
You think it would look a bit off? It
doesn't look quite right. I've seen photos of horses like from reenactments and stuff where they've got all the bardings on, and then someone's taken a picture of it, and it's like horses just don't look right. They've got very spindly legs.
You just think the alien nature of horses in general.
I think so. Yeah. If you just stop and look at a horse from it, you just think that's a weird-looking bugger. He's got long, spindly
sort of weird-looking bugger. Pete. The other thing is they announced the 40k robot horse.
Yeah.
Which I think the model is amazing, but I think it would just be much better. I say amazing, might be stretching it a bit far. I really like the model. I quite like to paint it, but I actually feel like it would have been better just as a Bretonian or something. It doesn't really make much sense to me even a robot horse. It just doesn't seem like a safe way to travel around the battlefield.
It doesn't really. I mean, considering you have like Sentinels and Rynos and Le Mans Russ battle tanks, and that sodding great battle tank they've released that's bigger than the Le Mans Russ, which looks fantastic. Yeah. I mean, yeah, why would you sit and go, no? Sorry? Oh, the
Robot Dawn,
yeah.
Or the airstrikes.
Yeah.
What's the horse going to do? It makes an airstrike.
Now,
he's got a flaming sword. Well, it's not a flaming sword, he's just got a sword.
He's got a ruddy flaming sword. I mean, I was watching a chat on one of the Discords, the Underworld Discords, about horses and 40k and stuff like that. And I think people were trying to put too much real life facts into this thing. Like, it's 40,000 years into the future. Real life doesn't really apply to any of the logic now, so you just got to accept it. It's just nuts.
Yeah, and that's fine. So you're saying I shouldn't be moaning about it?
Well, no, you can still moan about it. I mean, you're moaning about it more from the point of view as it just looks a bit absurd.
It looks absurd, yes. I think, but it just is absurd in the sense that it doesn't really make sense. But then I think they've kind of moved towards that in the last iterations of 40k anyway. Because I feel like, and I'm not an aficionado of the game by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like there's a lot more shields and swords and hammers and things have kind of crept into the game in the last few years. I
think they've always kind of had that. There's that old photo of like there's that kind of that photo of the Imperial Guard Commissar sticking out the top of a tank, waving a sword, saying like, "Drive me closer so I can hit them with my sword." And like, yeah, it's a bit nuts.
That kind of thing. I mean, if you're fighting anything pretty much in the 41st millennium, I just feel like a sword is not going to hold up. But anyway, the models look great. But I think that's because it's easier to make them more dynamic and more than everybody just holding a big gun. I think that's why they do it. So yeah. Oh, Sterling's on. Hello, Sterling. Sadly, he's a bit late because he didn't get a notification. You haven't. Well,
We'll forgive you.
So the other people could say whether you've missed much. We've been chatting away in our usual
nonsense.
Talking nonsense.
Just going back very quickly to 40k, the last thing that you can use logic in 40k is that people have all these wars on planets when there's exterminatus, where someone just goes, destroy the entire planet. I mean, why wouldn't you just do that? Oh, there's a big threat on this planet. Should we send down 100 Marines? Well, we could just blow the whole planet to pieces. Oh yeah, I forgot we had that. Beep. Boom. There we go. Horus is down there, is he? Beep. Boom. Oh no, Abaddon's invading and he's on Cadia. Beep. Boom. Oh, well, you did kill him though, so I guess that's all right.
Douglas O'Rourke has asked a question that we kind of already answered earlier. Are we going to revisit any of the old boys in Underworld? I was sort of saying I haven't got any desire to, but that doesn't mean I won't. But I don't know. I don't know whether it's because they're just so long ago I can't remember them. I just don't feel like the mechanics, I suppose, aren't quite as interesting, so they're kind of harder to pick up. But that said, I love it when we play Reavers.
Yeah, good old Garrix.
Never one of us plays them. I love playing Reavers.
Garrix
I mean, perhaps we should do Steelhearts versus Reavers with a
revisit.
Nemesis.
Yeah. Revisit
Nemesis
the old boys. Yeah. I think John, if John Gromminch, I don't know if he's in tonight, but if he's listening, hopefully he'll be coming to the studio some, because he's really interested in playing Utharis with Nemesis and trying them out. So that'd be quite interesting to see.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and the last bit of GW news. Sorry, I'm just looking at the football score. The last bit of the GW news is that they're going to do a new expansion to Curse City.
Mm-hmm. The last
because
expansion.
That's what everyone was asking for. The second and final expansion. So at first, when they said there was going to be new expansions back in the day,
and there was that map.
There wasn't a lie. There wasn't a lie because there are two. It was expansions plural. But you have to have the first expansion in order to play the second expansion. So it's hilarious to me. First, you had to manage to get a copy of the game anyway. Although I don't know they did bring it back
for a while.
Then you had to manage to get a copy of
that expansion.
The miniatureless expansion that was really hard to get hold of copy because they sold out almost immediately. And this one, I assume, isn't going to have any miniature space. Not going to have any miniatures as well. So I don't think anybody's going to be sad to draw a line under the whole Curse City experience, are they?
I think GW's sort of career, well not career, but GW's history can be defined at certain points by certain games. There was the one that was there was like a Man-O-War style boat game back in the 2000s, I think, which they massively overjudged the interest in and produced. Sorry?
Dreadfleet?
Yeah, Dreadfleet, I think, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Massively overestimated the popularity there would be. It ended up with like 1 billion copies that they couldn't shift, and that was one of the things where they started to realise, we're spending too much money on stock we're not selling, and they changed tack. And I think this is going to go into that list of notable games in their timeline of, do you remember when they screwed up? And, Curse City, so
although almost nobody ever got a copy, so nobody will know whether it was any good. It didn't seem that good. I have to say, compare it to Warcrow, which fully funded. Although the Warcrow Kickstarter started to annoy me, actually. I hate it when they add things on, and you have to. I think overall you ended up to get everything shelling out over $300, which is frustrating to me. Because the base game though I really thought had some really neat mechanics in it, and was much better than other Curse City type games.
Yeah.
And
it used an app, which GW are rubbish at trying to implement, is any kind of app to help with storytelling.
It's almost like there's somebody in the upper echelons who's religiously opposed to app-based technology.
Does seem to be.
I know there's a lot of people who like, if it's an app, I'm not interested. And we had people commenting on that when we did the stream and things on Warcrow. If it was run by app, they didn't like it, which is funny, isn't it? I guess I know there are concerns about kind of support and whether it's going to be pulled and whether but I kind of feel like maybe we're more traditional, or as a group we're more traditional than I think we are. And just maybe they just like the physicality and want everything to be physical. I mean, I'd much rather have an app, bearing in mind how little we actually pretend to play games for. I'd much rather have an app that ran for a couple of years than have to play forever with a really clunky paper-based AI. That's my own personal thought, anyway.
I think part of it is the fact that people are very bad at judging. Like, a lot of people will go out and think nothing about spending £1,000 on a new phone. But if there's an app they want and it costs 99p, they're like, I'm not spending 99p on a bloody app. What do you think I am? Mad? Like, you just spent £1,000 on a phone. What's it matter if you spend 99p on an app for? But I think there is definitely something around people don't like apps. I think they just feel like apps are very, like they're just not going to be around very long. I'm going to buy it and it'll be gone straight away and I won't have anything left to show for it. But it's like they're going to be around for longer than you're probably going to play the game for.
Definitely, because we only ever play our games about twice, most of us.
Exactly. There's like that one person out there that's like, I bought HeroQuest back in 1980 and I've run through the campaign 6,300 times now with each different character, and I played it every single different way using every different combination of upgrade cards, or and it's like, great, you definitely got your money's worth, but everyone else stopped playing that because something better came out.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, the whole purpose of all these game companies is to keep selling us games. So they don't actually want us to keep playing their game over and over again.
No.
So
they kind of want you to spend a couple of weeks, maybe a month playing it, and then go, right, that was fun, moving on now.
Tell people how good it is, and then everybody just buy it, and then not play it. I'm terrible for that. I'm just looking at behind me. I've got this.
See the shelf of stuff.
I'm really excited about the Lord of the Rings living card game. I just haven't got time to play it. So I bought a few expansions. I did the same with Marvel Champions, which is over here. I don't know if you can see that. I haven't gone off. That'll be off screen. But I get into it, play it, buy a few things, then keep buying them because I might get into it, and then eventually realise that I'm not going. So I've stopped buying both now. So that's something. That said, my little foray into Marvel Snap is making me think I need to go back and play some Marvel Champions. But that's by the by.
Anthony Boyd says that he's fallen victim to an app not being updated, and so the hardware being useless. Star Wars Nova. I mean, yeah, that can be annoying when that happens.
Yeah.
But I kind of think with just when there's not hardware component and it's just an app, you're probably safe for a couple of years at least. Even if they don't update it at all, the app's still gonna run, on whatever phone you've got for a couple of years at least, and that's probably going to be more than enough. Yeah, Stone North says it might have
99 pages. Yeah. Sorry, I was going to read out that comment. You get me to read it out.
Yeah, Sterling Nelson says it might be why they can't afford to pay 99p for that, because they just spent £1,000 on the phone. They're skinned from that. That is true. There is that. Blackstone Fortress could have done with an app, says Anthony. Yeah, I think I agree. Definitely.
And I think Curse City would benefit from one too. And I think basically any dungeon crawler where you haven't got a GM would benefit from that, because it's just much more intuitive. Well, not intuitive, it's much more interactive.
Well, there was Shadows over Hammerhall. We played that. That needed a DM. If that had an app, that would have been perfect. That would have been a great game. Yeah,
definitely. There was a web app for Blackstone Fortress, apparently. Well, I didn't know about that. Was that somebody made it up?
A fan app,
GW based?
They usually end up fan based, don't they?
Yeah, well, they got all the fan. I mean, like Underworlds DB, all the fan based stuff, and all the fan based stuff is brilliant. But both of those are much better than GW's own app.
Given the way things are going, that might explain why GW never bothered keeping their deck builder up to date.
Well, yeah, I mean, why pay somebody to do something for you if somebody did it for free?
Well, not only that, but maybe they saw, given how much advanced they work, maybe they stopped doing it way before they made this change in tack or anything. But yeah, it's hard to say.
Steve is going to try and bring us back to Underworld. Do you think single warband releases will include universal rivals decks along with the warband rival deck, or have they fully separated them into their own release now? Well, that is one of the things. I've got a list of things we wanted to discuss. That's some way down the bottom. Not in importance, just in the order that I've written it in. But we don't really know, do we? Because this new box came with 2 new warbands and 2 rivals decks.
Yeah. I think it had more cards in than any previous release. I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, but we don't know. So traditionally, warbands came with their own faction deck and then some universals. And I was thinking about it. Is every let's ignore the fact they do 2 core boxes now. Basically, each year is 8 warbands. Is each warband going to have its own rivals deck packed with it? Obviously, it's got its faction rivals deck, but is it going to have its own rivals deck with it? If it is, that's 8. And if they're all going to have plots, that's 8 different plot type rivals decks a year. And that's quite a lot of designing and effort and and invention. I think more than they need. I don't think they actually need to do that many.
See, I think
I suppose that's
Go on.
carry on.
No, after you. After you. Please, please.
Well, I was just saying, I forgot what I was going to say then.
I don't think that the warband releases will come with universal cards. I just don't think that's going to happen now.
But do you think there'll be a rivals deck in them, or do you? Because I think they'll just have the faction cards, and then they'll do an extra pack of like they did Deadly Depths or whatever it was, and they did Illusory Might. I think there'll be an extra pack for each half season will have its own extra rivals deck, and I think I would prefer that because I think almost 8. I would worry with having 8 in a year. New rivals decks. I'll worry about quality, and I'll just worry about overload.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to find the release schedule now to find the names of the 2 other decks that are coming up, but I couldn't find it. But I think we're going to get the warband on their own with nothing else in there, just the warband cards. And maybe we might get a small drop in price, but I don't reckon we'll get much if we do at all.
I don't think so.
So I think we'll just get.
I don't think so.
I think we'll get the warband, and to be honest, I mean, I'll still buy them.
Yeah, I mean, Seth said he would buy them. I would. I know one of our patrons suggested that he would prefer them not to be because then you don't. I guess you get back into that thing. Well, if I want the rivals deck, but I don't actually like the new Cabbage Warband or whatever, but I do want the rivals deck, you end up buying stuff that you don't want, and I kind of that model I don't like. So there's part of me which would rather they separated them out. Because in reality, I'll probably buy whatever they do. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I just worry that if the more rivals decks they try and do, the more Anonymous Jeff is in damn straight. It was Jeff who was one of our patrons who said it. The more rivals decks they do, the more chance there is of imbalance, the more chance there is that one of them or 2 of them will be fit.
I mean,
they're not very good in game terms. They just won't be as innovative and interesting.
I mean, there might be more chance for imbalance, but then we had that with the universal cards anyway, didn't we? That's why we ended up with Forsaken cards and restricted cards and all that kind of stuff. And at least if they make a rivals deck that is over the top, it'll be something they can easily limit very quickly. And if it's a deck that's rubbish, then people just won't pick it up, and there's not really that much lost. Kind of how
but if it's packaged in with all your warband.
Yeah. I'm hoping. Yeah. My personal preference is that they come out separately to the warbands, and that there's just a warband box and a rivals deck separately. Yeah,
just on a scale thing. I don't think we need 8 new warband decks, or not warband. Sorry, 8 new rivals decks a year. 6 will be 6 with mixes 2. 2 in the core set and 1 new one. 6 would be fine. We wouldn't need
it. No, it would be 8. It would be 8. It would be 8. Because you get 2 in the core set and 2 more with the 2 other warbands that come out for that 6-month release period.
Yeah, don't argue, but if they did them as separate packs, it would be 6.
Yes.
So actually, because of the way they do it now, you would only lose 2 because you're actually effectively only get 1. I know you get 2 warbands, don't you? So it would be.
It'd be 4. It'd be 4 rivals decks in a year. Because 4 would come in the core boxes, and then you would get 4 warbands released separately, and each of those would come with a timed rivals deck at the same time. Because the core boxes have 2 rivals decks and 2 warbands in.
Yeah. So that would be 8 then. I think we're talking across purposes now.
There will be 8 in total, but there'll only be 4 separate ones. The other 4 will be within the 2 core boxes that come out.
Yeah. I don't even know what point I was trying to make. I think my feeling would be I would like 2 in the core box, none with each of the 2 warbands that they release, and 1 extra. Yeah. So that will be 3 in each half season. So that will be 6 in the total season.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. I mean, whether it's 1 that comes with outside of the core box for each 6-month release period or 2. I mean, if they start to run out of ideas, they can always just drop it down to 1 instead of 2. But Yeah.
Bell says it took some searching, but the 2 new rivals will be Fearsome Fortress and Beastbound
Thank you
Assault.
very much.
And are they going to be in?
They haven't said.
So they are.
They just said they're going to be at the same time, but they haven't said if they're going to be in with the warbands or not.
Right. They're going to be at the same time as the warband, or same time as each other.
Same time as the warbands, but they haven't said if they're going to come in the same box as a single release thing, or whether it's going to be a warband and a rivals pack separately.
Yeah. What I definitely wouldn't like to see is them put together and an extra rivals deck, so then you'd be up to 10. You got 5 in each half season. I definitely don't want to see that.
The fact that they've given teasers on the 2 warbands and they've told us what the 2 rival decks coming up are tells me that either we're going to have the warband with that rivals deck in with it, or we're going to have the warband separately and the rivals deck separately. But that's it. There's not going to be any universals if that's the case.
They are all universal in themselves, except they've kind of shot themselves in the foot or contradicted themselves with the new play documents.
Yes, which we'll come on to in a second.
In the rule book, go on. We'll do it in a second, are we?
I was just going to say, Seth Levine asked, would we buy the rivals decks if they were packed in pairs? I'm pretty sure they won't be. Would I buy them if they were in pairs? Probably, because it's GW and I'll just buy it all anyway.
Well, as we kind of have to play everything, then yes. And of course, hopefully we'll continue our wonderful relationship with Get Games, and they'll send them to us. In which case, no, we won't buy them. It really would be.
You're not sending us to them for free? Well, we're not buying this rubbish then. we should take
we went for many years with buying both, buying a set and having a free set.
That's true.
That was, yeah.
And the more rivals decks that come out, the more chances we've got of being able to build multiple different decks and being able to share them anyway.
Absolutely.
Anonymous Jeff also puts a comment saying that he'd rather have more like Power Unbound or Leader style decks to boost faction cards. I'm not sure I want to go back to that world. Because technically right now you could still use like the cards from the Leader's deck or whatever, or the Power Unbound one that are faction cards. But it's like you could just turn up with these cards that are like 4 years old, and somebody new is going to be like, where did you get that card from? Be like, well, I bought it 4 years ago, you can't get it now. It just feels a bit rubbish to me. I don't know why.
I haven't really thought about that. It's not. Is it clear in the documents whether they're available?
It just says warband cards. It just says faction cards. So
they would be. So they would be allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the old
I mean, most of them are rubbish.
Most of them were pretty bad. There's the odd good one. There's a good one for the Gits, and they're just stuff new people.
There's a nice one from McGaw's. I think there was a really nice one from McGaw's, but it's just like, I don't really like, because it just means you end up with half the pack rotates out, but then some of the cards are still valid, and then you just end up with all these like, I just don't like it. I don't like it at all.
It does get confusing. Right, shall we go through this
in
the order that I've written it down? We might end up covering something again, but okay. So the slightly negative news of the week, and I don't know how many this affected you people watching, was that quite a lot of the boxes were damaged, or the interior of the boxes was damaged due to dodgy packing, which was a bit of a shame. But I know people at places like Will and Games working really hard to get it sorted out ASAP.
Yeah.
But it must be so frustrating for both the retailers and for Games Workshop themselves that something so simple gets ballsed up, because so much effort goes into releasing a product, and then
to have something so basic get cocked up at the end. But I'm hoping that they'll be able to trace back the batches that are no good, and they might be able to see, this was the batch that got created when Blind Harry took over for the weekend. Maybe there's a connection there, or
that Blind Harry will be put down.
Exactly, so I'm hoping that they'll find out whatever the problem was. Maybe one of the machines was playing up, and they had a few batches come out before they realised the machine was having a problem, and they might, whatever it is, hopefully they'll be able to sort it out for next time. I mean, they were packaged really badly, and for some reason they keep putting the inserts in the box. It's like, just don't put the insert in there. There would have been loads of room. There would have been plenty of room then. It's just nonsense.
Yeah. I have a story about quality control, which is entertaining. It may not be true, but I had a friend years ago when we left school. One of my friends went straight to work at Cadbury's, because we didn't live that far from the Cadbury's factory. And he said that they were showing the people around, and they were showing the quality control thing, saying if there's a slither of metal in any of the chocolates or whatever, then this alarm goes off. And to demonstrate it, he put a wrench on the conveyor, and it didn't go off. So they had to halt production.
Like,
And,
do you not test that? Like, we haven't tested that in years. We just assume it works. Order.
Yeah.
I mean, I work in.
Hello, you're from Quebec, Canada. It's very exciting.
Work on board, or we've gone all the way to. I don't think we've had anyone from Canada before. Well, it's not exciting.
Well, we
very cool.
have, but it's good to set the tempo. Matt set the
Oh, yes.
Matt
Good
set
point.
the tempo.
But he's not on tonight, so you know when he comes on. Then
No. But, do you know him?
No.
He's from Canada too.
I did get asked that once when I was in Vegas and I was playing blackjack, and somebody at the other end of the table said, "Oh, we're from London." They go round to my side. They're, "Where are you from?" And I couldn't be bothered to try and work to explain to them where I was actually from, so I just sort of said,
Say London,
yeah. So I just said London because it's like it's only 20 or
Yeah.
30 miles away. It's like it's close enough in this situation. And like, hey, do you know these guys? They're like, do you know how many people live in London? Just yes, I know them. I go around there on Sundays for tea. Yes, fine. Do you know the Queen? Yes, we go there for scones. No, she's dead. I mean, she wasn't then, but anyway, let's be random.
Worse than that, she's dead, Jim. So rolling on from our discussions of Dead Queens, we did get some new organised play documents.
We did.
Always very exciting
And
to get
confusing.
those. And I think, I think it's really good that because there was a long time when we didn't get them. So I think it shows that GW are. I mean, I think the whole change in the game shows that GW are determined to stick with the game, but it kind of shows that they are interested in the game and want to support the game. So that's really good. I had a quick look through the documents. The Rivals format official document is interesting. You can't play the White Dwarf decks anymore.
No, they're all gone.
Which I consider to be in the official, obviously, the Rivals tournament. You know, tournament organisers can do what they like, really.
No, if you try and play them casually, Phil will turn up at your house and just like knock your table over and take the deck and just throw it out the window. No.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's good.
Yeah.
I didn't like those. I didn't like it. I understand why they did it, but I didn't like it.
Also, I think part of the reason is because some of them you needed like 4 boxes to be able to actually put that deck together, and some that involved other Rivals cards. It just got messy. It's like I like the idea, but let's just don't do that again.
Yeah, and obviously, and therefore it's also gone for Nemesis because they would have got would have been totally wrong for it to carry on. Silent Menace has gone, which is I think nobody will care that much because the Silent Menace deck was awful. The Rivals deck, and was invented before Rivals was really a thing.
Well, it was kind of like their first. They announced it as a Rivals deck, didn't they? But Rivals didn't really exist as a.
Did they announce it as a Rivals deck? They certainly announced it as a standalone deck.
Sure, they called it a Rivals deck, but I can't remember now. Maybe they didn't. I can't remember. Now I think about it, I'm not 100% sure.
But I'm not sure.
I mean, I don't think it follows the format of their usual stuff now. In that they generally are quite. They're built better, like they have six surge objectives and stuff like that. I don't think that one had that, so it wasn't quite built as well as the others.
I remember it had 6, but it had some terrible cards. I think it had like surges where you had to kill somebody. You had to basically win the roll off and B kill something straight out the block.
In fact, there were 2 cards like that. There were 2 cards where you had to kill someone on turn 1 and something like that. So unless you get one round 1 and then another one round 2, you're stuffed.
And win the roll off
and kill somebody
because it was literally the first turn, or literally the first activation of the round. So it was terrible. So I don't think anybody's sad that that's gone. It does have pose an interesting question about Nemesis because there was some knickers being got in knots on the Facebook page.
Knicker knotting. About
whether now Nemesis was rubbish because stuff was going to rotate out because they rotated out the Silent Menace. It's hard to say at this point, I think, whether they're actually going to rotate stuff out. I kind of feel like eventually they'll have to.
Yeah.
But
in the same breath, it's not like they actually rotated anything out yet because Nemesis didn't exist till just now, so there hasn't been any rotation.
No, it's true. I mean, I can see why they didn't keep the Silent Menace in. It'd be much easier in future because all the new Rivals decks have got their own logos. It'd be much easier to have a pool of those and then they could even say which ones are valid in any given season, which is
Yeah.
quite a good way of doing it, I think. The better way is a way of rotating without completely making your collection, no, that bit of my collection now useless. As if they were producing, say, 6 Rivals decks a year, say, it'd probably be more than that, but let's say 6, then very quickly they're going to have a lot, but they could just say, well, these are the 10 that are valid this season for all of the years of work. And I quite like that, because it means they can mix it up as they want, and say, and without you just saying, well, actually, I might as well just throw those away now because I can't use them anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, we know they're going to be producing 8 Rivals decks a year. In 2 years, there's suddenly going to be 16 Rivals decks to pick from.
It will be 8, won't it? Sorry,
yeah, you're not going to want more than 16 to choose from, I think. And as much as we all like to get as much value out of that bit of card that we paid $19.99 for 2 years ago, it's like at some point it's just nice to buy new stuff, and I think everyone has to get used to the fact that it's a rotating system, and if you want to play remotely within the confines of the more official format, everything's going to rotate out. I mean, I personally think they should start rotating out warbands, and I think they should have done that from a little while ago. But the cards, at least, they're going to rotate out eventually, so you're not going to have your 3 seasons ago Rivals deck still available, because there's just more stuff now there.
I disagree with you slightly there. I think it would be nice if they didn't. I mean, I think 8 Rivals decks is probably too many a year, but that's by the by. I think that they could. I would like it if they kept the Rivals decks in longer, so you could keep playing them.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you're going to end up with 16 though, aren't you? Not 8. You're going to end up with 16 Rivals decks.
I know. You're right. When you put it like that, it seems not. This is the wrong word, but it seems a bit pointless saying, "Oh well, I don't want them to rotating up," because I mean it's not only 16. If they keep going,
if they do it every 6 months, then it would just be like it will just be like 4 rotate out every 6 months. That's not quite so bad.
But I don't know whether they will or not. But I actually quite like the idea that they might say these 16 are valid. Once they've got, let's say, once they've got 32 Rivals decks. I quite like the idea that they might say these are the 16 or these are the 10 that are valid this season. Yeah. So you could go back, and then that will give you a bit more of a challenge. You could go back to an older one and get more use out of your products. But we'll see, I guess.
It's a funky idea, but I don't think they will, because I think once they get to a point where like this is 2 years old, they're just like, it's dead to us. We don't care about it.
Well, because that is the way they operate, isn't it?
Yeah. Also, if you've got a load of new players and you go, for this season we're going to make stuff from 3 years ago valid, and they're going to go, I can't buy that.
Yeah, that is a good point. That is a very good point. Okay, we'll scratch that idea then.
Don't get me wrong, I like the idea myself, and hopefully we'll see a lot more unofficial setups where people do tournaments where they're going to go play like the old boys tournament, where it's like, we're going to use the first 5 Rivals decks from 3 years ago or something like that, and then people can go and drag those out the drawer or something.
Like a relic format.
Yeah.
Somebody else was complaining that the board, you couldn't use your old board if you were trying to get back into it, and you had, you didn't have any Rivals decks. You kind of, because they're specific boards, but the boards are from the starter set, so that doesn't bother me so much that they've rotated out a load of the boards. Because the starter set boards are also the Nightvolt one, or half of the Nightvolt and Shadespire board, so that's fine. I think they've done it quite well keeping in the starter sets, because a lot of older players or longer term players have still got the boards knocking around. I mean, I know we have. So I think that's okay. I don't see that being a massive issue.
I also am least bothered by losing boards out of everything. It's like if someone turned up and said, I've got a board from Chasm or Beastgrave, do you mind if I use that? I probably won't even notice, other than I might go, oh, that artwork's quite cool, I forgot about that. And that's going to be like all I care about boards.
There were a couple of dodgy boards in the middle there.
Yeah.
There was some.
They got a bit silly.
Blocks.
Sterling, Northern and Setterling both have to go, so goodbye to you both. Thank you for joining us.
See you, everybody. 16 Rivals next. I'm sure at least half of them will end up being rubbish. Yes.
Yeah.
And that will be a shame. But that Yeah,
But then
that's the
look
problem with having
at Nemesis. I mean, not Nemesis. Look at Championship. We ended up with like 300 odd Universal cards, and 200 of those were solid dog crap. So it's inevitable
true.
you're going to have some rubbish. I'm hoping, because they're going to make these Rivals decks more sort of themed around something that all the cards are going to point towards, they'll be better as a cohesive unit. Whereas when you can pick and choose what you want, it's like, well, 5 cards from this Rivals deck are the best, 5 cards from that Rivals deck are the best, and so on. This way it's like, I've got this Rivals deck, there are some stonking cards in there are some stinky cards in there, but it all works towards a theme, so overall it works.
Get less broken interactions.
Yeah.
Because there's less combinations to break things with. But,
yeah. And while some Rivals decks don't suit some warbands as well, like the Tooth and Nail one doesn't work with large fighters and stuff like that, so it's not going to be good for your Mologs and your Hrothgorns and your Morgoks and things. I think that's good, because then it means it's a deck that actually will maybe suit some weaker warbands a bit better.
Beef them up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, interesting move on the Championship side, that they've now kind of lumped it into Relic. There's one document for Relic and one, and I don't know whether you should read anything into it, but they placed Relic first and put Championship after it, which I thought was a really interesting choice, because I know, well, I don't think the player base is big enough to support 3 formats, but I mean, nobody really plays Relic, and you don't see Relic tournaments organised. You sort of need to go Rivals plus Nemesis, then Championship, then Relic.
But that could possibly be because of a change potentially incoming for Championship, which we'll come on to in a moment.
Yeah, it just seems odd that they've done that. I mean, I can see why they don't want 3 documents, but I think I would have put, if it was me and they wanted to promote Championship as being the golden. I don't particularly want to promote it as the golden thing, do they? But that it is kind of seen as the gold standard of the game by a lot of people, particularly Championship players. Funny enough, I think I'd have put it first.
Yeah.
But the document contradicts the rules. This is what we were going to talk about earlier, and I kind of got sidetracked, but we're back on it now. The core rulebook of Gnarlwood, I believe, says that in a situation where you're going to choose cards from more than one deck that has a plot, so a deck with two decks with plot cards, you can pick the plot card that you want to use.
Yeah, but only
so
one.
If you were going to take some cards from the Tooth and Nail, Tooth and Claw, or some cards from the I don't want to say Deadly Depths, it's not called that, the the Explorers one, whatever that's called.
Yeah. Daring Delvers.
Daring Delvers. You're gonna you would pick either the Explorers or the Savage plot, and you pick which one you want, and the other one you couldn't use any of the advantages of. In the document for the Championship play, it says you pick one.
Yeah.
You can only pick cards from one
Rivals deck. Yeah.
That has a plot card. So you can still pick cards from what's it called? Illusory Might or the Delver. No, it's not. The Deadly Depths and the Daring Delvers are too close in name.
Yeah.
And they get confused.
Yeah, they are.
So you can still take cards from that, but you can't, for Championship as it stands, you can't take cards from both the Tooth and Claw and the Explorers one, which kind of it's contradictory to the rule book, and that has interesting ramifications for people who are scared that Championship's going to die, because if every single deck that they produce has a plot card, then this time next year when Harrow Deep and Nethermaids have rotated out, then you'll only be able to choose cards from one other deck, because you'll be excluded from picking the others if they all have a plot card.
I mean, there'll be the Essentials deck still, obviously, but aside from Essentials, you'll only have Rivals decks.
But that would effectively make Championship Rivals Plus.
Yeah.
There's Rivals Plus, and you could pick from one. You could pick your faction card from one
But it's a more
Rivals
restricted.
Deck.
It's
And the
slightly
Essentials.
more expanded Rivals Plus, isn't it? Because you can take.
No, it's the same.
No, because you could take. Right now in Championship mode, you could take cards from the Essentials pack, and you could take Tooth and Claw. Whereas you can't in Rivals Plus. You can only have Tooth and Claw or Rivals or Essentials.
Oh yes, you're right. Sorry, yes, my bad. Yeah.
So it's only a slightly. It's basically Nemesis with the Essentials pack slapped on top.
Which I think, as most people would concede, that the Essentials deck was not terribly well thought out and has quite a lot of boring same cards in it.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't bode that well for Championship. So they can't. They're in a bit of a rock and a hard place, aren't they? I mean, I know they obviously can change it, so they can change whatever they like, but they kind of said that Essentials will be evergreen.
Yeah.
And I wonder how many years of statute of limitations is on that. I wonder at what point they could say, well, actually, I know we said it was evergreen, but you've had 5 years worth out of it, and now
So
we're
they'll get
done
lost.
because actually nothing is evergreen.
In fact, none of you
Yeah,
bastards
you can't.
bought it because you just reused the cards from season 1 and 2 or whatever instead. So
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. Jeff says, we'll be interested to see if somebody finds an oppressive combination if they ban the combo or restrict individual cards.
I think they'll
Yeah,
restrict
that'd be
individual
interesting.
cards.
I think it's going to be easier to restrict the cards,
Yeah.
isn't it? But restriction is going to be a lot trickier. I wonder if you might see cards being forsaken if they really mess it up.
They might
Because-
they might forsaken them if you or say you can't take this card if you're building a Nemesis deck or something like that. Maybe.
Because the chances of you having 3, if they keep it at 3, the chances of you having 3 restricted cards in a Nemesis deck seems unlikely.
Well, I mean the warbands. You've only got a few warbands that have that many restricted cards. There's like Hrothgorn, Briar Queen, and Morgox. No, Morgox only has 2.
Yeah.
So only Hrothgorn and the Briar
Yeah.
Queen have 3 cards. Most of the rest are just 2. So
Right. So it kind of that leans pretty heavily into the Nemesis format, because they can literally have those cards. It's like when we played Vanguard without the list. Some bright sparks just decided they were going to choose the ones with the most restricted cards because they suddenly were, you were never going to run out of space.
they did all right.
And you'd be, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, I think that kind of covers the document.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing for me out of all of the documents is the fact of what that means for Championship going forwards. Come this time next year, like you say, Championship's going. I mean, based on what we know so far, Championship is just going to become Nemesis Plus almost.
I'll have a plus in the season, so that's good. But yes, it is. It is, and I wonder what that. We're not particularly Championship players, so it doesn't really affect us. But I wonder what hardcore Championship players think of that.
And I know that GW have sort of said, I think it was a man. No, it wasn't. It was Ash from Guerrilla Games. He had an interview with GW, and he said that when they were looking into the people playing Underworlds, they were quite shocked to find how few people actually wanted to do deck building, and how few people were interested in the deck building aspect and wanted just a quick setup play game. And I know that people online, if you talk to anybody online, they'll claim that Championship is the only way, and without Championship the game will die. I think GW, they know what their market looks like, and they will have made a savvy choice based on what they know. Are they
The amount of
So I was just going to say, are they moving to basically get shot at Championship because they know actually it puts more people off than it encourages?
Yeah, and so the amount of re-interest in the game or new interest in the game would suggest that they made the right decision. And it'd be interesting to see what they do with tournaments. They're still running Championship tournaments. They're still running tournaments at Warhammer World and what have you. There's at least one. There's one in November and one at the beginning of next year, isn't there? So they definitely are promoting the game and supporting the game. And I don't think. Well, it'd be interesting whether they could still. Like, a Grand Clash was considered to be like the big sort of epic Championship battle, which obviously they haven't had since the pandemic. But it'd be interesting to see whether they can still call them that, still try and suggest it's that if they do have a much more restricted card pool. I don't think the game is any worse for it, as we've discussed. I mean, I think it's the game at the end of the day.
I've built 4 decks in the last day or so, and I hadn't been interested in building a deck pretty much this entire year before now because of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some people think that it's going to be hard to balance with fewer cards. So I don't necessarily subscribe to that theory, but I think at the end of the day, while deck building is important, the challenge is on the day of each tournament, sitting down, looking into the whites of your eye, the eyes of your opponent, and trying to outfox them on the table. I think that's for me where it is. I think the Grand Clash is still safe, and there's still the excitement of a competitive game across the table is still there if that's what you want.
Also, with
obviously,
sorry, go on.
I was just saying, but obviously a lot of people don't want that.
No.
Sort of ultra competitive.
But it is interesting to see
a well-honed deck.
But it is interesting to see with the Bugman's clashes and stuff, which only seem to be getting more and more popular. They're all rivals for plus formats. So they're basically Nemesis. It's interesting to see the number of different war bands, the number of different deck combinations and stuff coming out. And Essentials comes up a lot, but hopefully that'll happen less and less. Especially if they move to a Nemesis format, we won't see roster.
Nemesis.
So
I think even if he didn't outright say it, he certainly suggested it in his last Facebook thing. He said it was going to be the last. Yeah, Rivals Plus game. I think he said.
And I think that can only be good for the game, because like we were talking before, when Grimwatch came out, and it was the season of Grimwatch, and they won like 3 big tournaments back to back. And we haven't seen that with the Bugman's Rivals Plus matchups. There's always been different things. There's been a splattering of different seasons in there, seasons 1 and 2 and stuff like that. It's just been more varied, and I just think that's can only be good for the game. I'm sure a lot of die-hard championship players will say it was because people are just taking what they want because they're not playing it seriously. But I prefer that, to be honest. I'd rather play against a load of people that aren't taking it too seriously and play a lot of different games than go to a Grand Clash and play 4 of the same warband.
Or just adding more variety to the meta. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's interesting because even though people say, "Oh, the game will be totally ruined if it's not championship," you had your top 16, and probably the 20 people who were trying to get into the top 16. But whenever any Grand Clash we went to 2. Both Grand Clashes we went to, there were an awful lot of people who were literally just there to slink and die, let their naked dwarves run around the board,
play some games against people they've never played games against before,
and just have fun.
Yeah.
Which kind of at the end of the day, it's about kind of why we're here.
It's literally the only good reason anyway, because I've said it before and I'll say it again: winning a Grand Clash becomes almost immediately pointless because they'll release a new warband, new cards, new rules within a year.
I mean, imagine if you devoted an entire year of your life to it and bang on about it on the blog.
It's a bit sad.
Awful.
It's a bit sad.
Yeah. There's nobody who would give a shit now.
No, it's like if someone turned around and said, I won the first Grand Clash of Underworlds, people are going to be like, so? There are only 3 warbands out, who cares? It's like, it doesn't matter, no one cares, so let's move on and just enjoy what's coming out now and just enjoy it for what it is now, rather than trying to make it into something more than it actually is, which is board games.
I've only got one thing left on the agenda, because we've covered the last thing already.
Right. Did you see the thing Anonymous Jeff was wondering is perhaps they plan to release a separate season deck of Championship Universals? I mean, they haven't announced anything.
See that and then immediately forgot it because I'm tired.
Alright, so am I. But we're near the end, so bear with us, viewers. We're nearly there. I mean, they might, I guess, but I'm not 100% convinced they will. I think they're definitely deciding to go all in on Nemesis and that kind of format with Rivals decks now. So, but we'll see.
Yeah. I think the problem is they've got such a fragile fan base. I feel like the game is kind of on a knife edge, and it's kind of it can expand, but it can easily just fall. There's a mixed metaphor, but it can easily just fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
If they get it wrong, then everybody's going to like if they decided that at some point they were going to release an Arena Mortis pack that had loads of really good cards in it that you could then use in your Rivals deck or something, then people would just go, fuck this, excuse my French, and we're out here. You know,
Yeah.
because that's what people kind of did. But I feel like each time they've done it, not as many people have come back, and so I just feel like now they've got to play it right. I mean, I really hope they do, and I think they will, because I don't think they're going to try and pander to the ultra competitive lot. Because at the end of the day, I think the ultra competitive lot will just become ultra competitive with what they have available.
Yeah.
So you don't really need to pander to them. If you gave them a couple of bits of string and some lint, they would get ultra competitive.
I mean, there's competitions about Scrabble, so it's like people will find ways to be competitive with anything. But you can make it something that you can.
I would argue Scrabble's more difficult and more likely to be competitive than like Warhammer Underworlds, but maybe that's the subject for another podcast.
But it's like you can get extreme ironing and all that kind of stuff. But it's like people will turn anything into a competition. So, like you say, it doesn't matter if you've got 500 cards to pick from, or whether you've only got a deck of 32. And it makes no real difference. And I'm sure people will complain that certain things are just automatically better than others, but that's always been the case. It's no different now.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to chess, that's still fairly competitive. In fact, it's so competitive that people still cheat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also,
I think the central game is fine. It doesn't really matter how many cards it's got, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
What are you doing? You're leaving. You look like you're about to pack up.
I'm gone. I'm trying to get something off the edge there. So it was, yeah.
So the last thing I've got, and this is I've only seen this in one place on the Facebook page, but we did notice it. The plunder token wording is pretty bad.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah. So if you're wondering, plunder tokens, in the current iteration of the game now, you place the 5 objectives like you used to right back at the beginning of the game, and they're called feature tokens, and you place them face up, and then when they're face up, they're objective tokens, and when they're the other way up, you can flip them. They are feature tokens.
Yeah.
But to make things more confusing, and this is one of those things, I suppose it's a legacy, and when they try to change things, and they should never have called the objective tokens, they should have called something else, I think.
Like
there's also another
key
type of
tokens
feature token, effectively, which is called a snare hex, it has the same back as the feature tokens with objectives on them, a different front, which is a snare. I forgot what I was saying. And so, now you can, when you plunder now, when you kill something, you can, if there's any objective tokens out, you can put them down on the board, objective face up. You cannot place a snare token, even though they're called a feature token, and the bit in the plunder box refers to feature tokens, because it says you have to place an objective tile up, and because the snare tokens don't have an objective tile, you can't place them.
And they needed to really clarify in the text. They needed to say if the feature token does not have an objective side, it cannot be placed. They needed to say something like to be specific.
That's all it needed. Or if it's a snare hex, if it's a feature token, whatever. Yeah. Either way, it must have an objective side or something like that. It just the clarification was there, easily had. I think it's just an oversight at the end of the day. But I have seen it cause confusion.
I do think it's because people tend to like to read something and then stick the old crowbar in there and say, well, it says if it has it says the objective side has to be placed up, but if it hasn't got an objective side, then you can still place it. It just hasn't got to be placed that side up because it hasn't got it. Like, that's not what they mean. And we will.
But as somebody pointed out in the discussion, the rules do say if you can't fulfil all of the criteria of a rule, you can't do it.
Yeah, that's true. True.
Because they used to have that as an issue, where people were trying to say they could do bits of their cards because it didn't matter that they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So, but that's really it's only the marrying up of that bit of rule that says if you can't complete an instruction, you can't do it.
Yeah.
And that other rule, the plunder rule, that actually makes it make sense. Otherwise, I was like, well, I'm totally confused. I could place a feature hex that says, but I haven't. These are the feature hex. I haven't got an objective. So what do I do? Can I do it? And so it's not a big thing.
We didn't get the clarification directly from the mouths of the designers, but we're good enough. We got confirmation from somebody in the know who basically said, I've checked, and yes, it's this. And even I think Nick weighed in on a Facebook post about it. Nick Baton from GW basically weighed in and said, yes, that's how it works, it's just that way.
Yeah.
So that's definitely how it is. This isn't this is our opinion, that's definitely it. And we stake money on that, basically. That's how confident
but
we are.
nobody's listening now anyway, because we've been talking for an hour and a half. And
Ages and ages and ages. So, yeah, that was it. I think for the most part, though, Gnarlwood is definitely going to feature more on the channel, because I think they're just doing some good stuff with it now. I think when
I totally agree with that.
When we sort of lost interest in it, I think they were still pandering a lot more. I don't say pandering, but they were geared much more towards the ultra competitive championship kind of design, which we had fallen out of love with, and they were still making lots of changes that didn't seem to make sense. But
I think because maybe because they do these things a long time in advance, the Arena Mortis pack came out, and it was like right at the wrong time. I think it was just before lockdown. I can't quite remember. It was completely the wrong time.
Yeah.
It had a lot of really overpowered cards that really spoilt the game. Really made the Voltron meta like significantly better.
Yeah.
You know, basically piling all the cards on one fighter, and then so that was awful. And it really ruined spoiled the game for me. And then they did it again a year later, and because the cards weren't quite so powerful, but they did, you know, and it was even more ridiculous then because it was even harder to get. It was just difficult to get people together, and it just seemed like a completely tone deaf release. It was quite expensive. It was in plastic. It was just, and I just felt I don't really. And they stopped doing any updates and FAQs, which I guess was probably harder for them to do that kind of thing because they were in lockdown too. But harder to get the
I feel like they could very easily have done a lot of that though. And whilst they couldn't have supported,
they could have done. They obviously totally could have done. But I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. But it just felt like really tone deaf. Really like they didn't really care about the game, and it was probably finishing. And I think obviously we've been playing a lot over with tabletop simulation. I think that killed it for us.
Yeah.
We have to say, despite the fact that we kind of do this for fun, it is more fun to do something to sort of 1,500 views than 200.
Yeah.
It just is. So I think audiences tailed off because there was just general lethargy about everything at that point in time. But I feel like now the game is, with these changes, they clearly love the game. They clearly want to support the game. They clearly thought about the game, expanded the game, and I think the response to that is that it has got more interest. It's got more buzz. We're not getting up as many as 1,500 views, but our views are lifting, and I think that just makes us more positive about doing that game and not trying to find something else. Because at the end of the day, for us, we love playing it, but if only 2 people watch it, it's hard to keep making it. We might find a different game that people want. So, but I don't think there is. I think Underworlds is our jam.
I do think it suits us. It is definitely aimed at people like us, and now that they're moving back towards the Rivals format, it suits us more because we are that slightly more competitive, more casual, coffee table game type people. We're not uber competitive, want to spend 6 hours building decks and all that kind of nonsense. It's interesting that you say that we did feel that their releases were getting a bit tone deaf. It could be just as easily argued that their releases now are very tone deaf, but towards the other section of the community, the more competitive section, and because it's less tone deaf towards us, we're happier about it. But we'll have to see how that goes, I guess.
I'd argue that, but you'd be wrong.
Obviously, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
I see what you're saying. But I think the fact that this release has got people interested, whereas the other release still people's interest, would suggest that what I said was correct.
It does feel like this one is encouraging more people. It does.
Yeah.
Seem to be encouraging more people back who are like, I played this in Shadespire, or I played this in Nightfall, or I've never played this before and it looks quite fun. So I do think it's encouraging more people back because it is a little bit more casual and there's less of a massive buy-in ceiling for these kind of things where people have to go, I want to play this game. Cool, you have to go and buy a year and a half worth of releases to get remotely involved.
Absolutely. So it's drifted past 11 o'clock. I was actually up really early this morning because I don't know why. I just woke up. I woke up a couple of times in the night and I woke up really early. And
It's very windy.
And now I'm knackered. So I'm going to go to bed.
Yeah, same here. It was very windy last night.
It was. It's windy tonight too. The studio was... It's not so bad now, but when I came out here, it was blowing absolute gale. It was an aeroplane. Yeah.
Was there an airplane doing in the studio?
Well,
very low flying.
Yeah, it was a bit slightly in the phone. Well, I am quite near Gatwick, but not as near as you. But
no.
It's quite low. Anyway, that's by the by.
So thank you everyone for joining us this evening. If you joined us live, if you're watching it back later on YouTube or via the podcast, then thank you very much for your time. Do like, subscribe, ring the bell, and do all that good social media stuff.
Yeah, and check out us on Facebook and Twitter and all that kind of things. There will be some more Marvel Snap coming in. We've got we're playing Underworlds this week.
Yep.
We're playing basically 2 games with the same.
We're certainly going to try.
Yeah.
One at least, and we'll see how far we get with that one. But that'll be live, so we'll be starting that about 9, just before 9 o'clock. If you're interested, join us on Thursday.
Yeah, come and join us. That'll be Thursday, and then next week we have. Next week is next week. We haven't.
No idea, no clue. No clue what's going on.
There may be more live shenanigans next Tuesday and next Thursday as we dive deep into the Gnarlwood.
Gnarlwood. So we shall see you soon. Stay safe.
Yeah. Bye everyone.
Bye.